Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the Wee Knives Practic. First off, I want to actually thank my buddy Steve. He's been a long-time Patreon patron and supporter of the channel, and anybody who does, very large Patreon contributions has the option to choose, basically choose a piece of gear for me to check out, and this was the piece of gear that he chose for me to check out, and I think he chose well because it's a nice piece of gear. So I want to thank him very much, both for his long-term support and friendship for that matter, and for choosing this little guy along. But I did purchase this guy on my own from I think Blade HQ or someplace like that. So there you go. Next thing, size comparison. This is actually it's kind of a nicely sized knife in a lot of ways. It's right in the middle there. This is the Spyderco Delica. Here it is, the Ontario Rot number 2. It's the Ontario Rot. No, Ontario Rat number 2. Right here, the Ontario Rat number 1. So we can see this comes in right in the middle there. It's sort of, if you are in that uncanny valley between the two, this is exactly where you want to go. And then I'll put it up against a couple of other quick wee knives I've got on the table, because I've got a couple of their things around here. Here it is against the Wisp, I'm sorry, this is the Vapor. And so you can see here, nice blade length, etc. So there you go. Next thing, and one thing to note, if you follow my Instagram channel, Nick Shabazz on the Instagram, you might have seen me talking about the fact that this knife developed a little bit of a patina at one point in time. I noticed that it was doing something maybe a little bit weird, and given I live by the ocean now, well, not like by the ocean, but like I could drive to the ocean within a few minutes, and so maybe that's what's caused it. But I ended up doing a rust test, basically, where I used some salt water, and I put it on this guy, and I put it on the M390, and so also here, just to make sure that what I was seeing wasn't out of line. And so you can see a little bit on the blade there. I haven't fully cleaned it up yet. But that is absolutely a thing, but I have no reason to believe that this is anything other than M390, and that's what went on there. But overall, yeah, let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly. Just wanted to give a quick disclaimer for the people who might have seen that but not checked back in. So let's go ahead and talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. Okay, so on the good side, first off, this is a very nice knife internally. As you saw during the disassembly, this is actually heavily skeletonized internally. It's got liners, but those liners have a lot of cutouts. Actually, the liners have a very nice polish to them. You can see here, there's a nice blue, sort of an outrunny aesthetic, and I gotta say, you can see it even better on the back here. It does make the knife a little bit more interesting than, for instance, on the Rats, where you've just got gray there. It's a little thing, but that polish and anodization thing and very often be attractive. Next thing, ergonomically speaking, this is pretty good. Even with my relatively small fingers, I can get up here and choke up a little bit, but in this position particularly, I feel like this works well in my hand. It fills the hand, it's got plenty of grip, the clip isn't too bad. Ergonomically speaking, we're good to go. Speaking of the clip is actually very nice for carrying because it's got plenty of ramp, and this is the same clip, or at least a variant of the one that we've been using a lot lately, and it can be flipped over, making this knife ambidextrously carryable. So that's really nice. Next thing, this has a very nice blade. It is an M390 steel. M390, here I'll zoom in a little bit. M390 is a great blade steel, 100%. It's kind of in the top of the top tier right now. Well, maybe not on top of the top tier because there's crazy stuff out there, but in terms of the commonly available steels, M390 is among the best. And so it's really nice to see that guy here. It has a very nice practical shape. Practic. But you got some flat area. You got a little bit of belly. You got a nice tip here. The tip is relatively strong on this guy. And it is ground well to cut. It will cut well down here. It's a little less pokey up at the tip there. And it is a relatively thin stock. It's not like crazy thin like on the Wisp, for instance. On the Wisp, for instance. But it is absolutely it's a thing there. And I got to say, using this blade was pleasurable. It's a solid. Pleasurable? That's a weird thing to say. Anyways, using this blade, it worked well as a tool. Every time I used it, it was like, yeah, that worked. And finally, on the good side, I gotta say I like the design. It kind of comes across as being very utilitarian, and it's got a couple of nice little design touches. It's got this 3-line motif, and you can see here that these 3 lines turn into jimps and then turn back into 3 lines. That's nice. And again, the 3-line thing here, 3 lines here. It's a relatively straightforward knife. It's just G10 on liners on G10. But you know what? It works. And you know what? It's got a nice flipper tab. It's got nicely shaped. It's very practical. It feels very utility focused. It feels like a good tool. And frankly, it's the Practic. It better freaking be practical. So to me, at least, that's what's good here. Is it's got a nice design, a great blade, very nice clip, ergonomics, pretty solid, and the skeletonization is pretty good. On the great side to me is the value here. The value is pretty well done. This is coming in about $145, and you know that That's still a fair chunk of change for a pocket knife. But the thing is, for M390 steel, which is really impressive, that's one of the lower priced options out there, and particularly, yeah, compared to, for instance, the Steel Wheel Modus came out, or Cutjacker, those guys came out at about 150 bucks for M390. That was really impressive to a lot of people, and then we has kind of returned the fire by doing that. Right now, I think the only way of getting M390 cheaper than that is actually in the Kershaw Dividend. They have a version of this knife, which is, this is assisted, by the way, but they have a version of this knife which is available in M390 for, I think, 90 bucks, but they tend to be limited runs, so they're hard to find. But in terms of commonly available production knives, this is right in that good price range there. And the fact that you're also getting a very nice action with it, you know, and We Knives construction, which is quite good, by the way. I have to say, value-wise, this is coming in pretty damn well. And it's, you know, a knife I absolutely wouldn't hesitate to pick up if I was looking for a good value option. So to me, that's what's great, is the value here is pretty strong. And We Knives has played that game a lot, but it's good to see them really pushing the value routes. On the bad side, first off, it does have a little bit of a pocket pecker thing going on here. You can see here, this guy is going to be pecking on whatever's in your pocket all damn day long with this flipper tab. Not the end of the world, but it's a thing. Next thing, this little area here is a little awkward because it's a little bit big to be a sharpening choil, although I can see with this gradual plunge they needed to do it that way. But it's a little bit small to be a finger choil. I kind of wish they'd extended it up a little bit so I could actually really reliably use this as a finger choil, as they have, for instance, in the Wisp here, where I can choke up. Or that they'd done the plunge a little differently and had a smaller choil. As such, this just feels like it's in that uncanny valley between the two. Not a big fan of that. Next thing, the G10 on this guy. This is G10, this material up here, but it ends up feeling, honestly, a little plasticky. You know, the difference in quality, felt quality of materials between this and the Rat One, there's no real difference here. And this isn't actually G10, I don't believe. So, you know, it's fine. You know, it's not the end of any worlds, but it is definitely kind of a step down in some ways relative to some of the other G10 you see out of Wii. Mind you, G10 is itself kind of plasticky. It's a resin sort of thing. Next thing, this is meant to be a practical knife, and it is using a bearing pivot. Now, look, bearings are great. I use bearings on a regular basis. They will work fine, but you need to take them apart, clean them out a little bit more often. The fact is, Wii is using good screws now, so it is pretty easy to take apart and clean up. So you go ahead and watch my video for it. But it makes it a little bit harder to recommend as a, you know, value option for, you know, a random jackass on the street when, you know, it will require that cleanup. I don't know. This is somewhere where my opinion has been shifting a little bit as I've done more review and as I've handled more excellent knives on washes. There is still a part of me that's like, you know, washes for a lot of people in terms of practicality may be the better option. So, you know, it's not the end of any world, certainly, and it shouldn't dissuade you from buying this knife, but just do know that you've signed yourself up for some maintenance when you buy a knife on bearings. Then finally, on the bad side, and probably the thing I like least about this guy, is that the tent is a little lighter relative to what we usually puts in things. Look, it's fine. I think, pardon me, you know, all of my time carrying this knife, I maybe missed one flip or something like that, because the dent is a little bit on the lighter side, and it doesn't, does it? No, it doesn't do the shakeout sort of thing. So, you know, it's okay, but it feels a little bit, especially if we compare it to, like, for instance, the Wisp here, which has a really snappy, good old-fashioned weed detent. This one is maybe a step down, and that's maybe a little frustrating, but only in the weird knife geek sense. It's absolutely sufficient. So, anyways, there you go. That is, to me, what's bad here is the detent is a little bit lighter. Bearings aren't a stellar choice for an everyday carry piece. The G10 ends up feeling and seeming a little bit plasticky. It's got an awkward choil and a bit of a pocket pecker. On the, and actually, I was torn as to whether this is bad or ugly, but I feel like Wii Knives' surface finishes don't tend to be very good. They tend to be a little scratchy, and that leads to the kind of patinaing and micro pitting of rust, you know, and they're given this was with strong saltwater solutions. I'd like to see them, and, you know, the coatings that they're doing, you know, as much as I dislike black-coated blades, that does have an effect for rust resistance, but this is definitely, I'd like to see their blade finishes get a little bit better, because it does tend to lead to a little more staining than you would have gotten otherwise. So, there you go. Final conclusions here, that's the ugly, is that the blade finish is a little so-so on some of Wii Knives' more budget-focused pieces. Same thing on the Ferrum Forge Mass Drop Gent. But anyways, so final conclusions on this guy. It's a really solid everyday tool. It's a nice blade, a nice handle, some nice design touches, a great steel, and just excellent value. It's also not perfect. It's got a bit of an awkward choil. It's pocket pecking for sure. A little bit of a lesser action than we is generally known for, and the choice of bearings is a little weird for a practical user sort of knife. But the thing is, mostly it's a great piece. Absolutely 100%. It feels like Wee's answer to the Ontario Rat series, both in profile and in addressing value. And although they're in very different kind of price brackets. I mean, this guy is coming in, at 35, 40 bucks in D2 steel, and this guy's 150 with M390. But at the same time, they feel like they share a common heritage, a genetic goal, something along those lines. Genetic goal? I don't know that genes do that. I guess they do. The desire to reproduce is a goal. Anyways, I digress. But I think that there's a spiritual similarity, if you will, between these guys. And I think it is a really nice choice. If this is what Wee is doing sort of as their budget-focused option, although they've got a new budget brand coming here soon, it's really, really well done. And it's a knife that I have no trouble recommending at all. It's honestly right at the edge of being a gem. With a bit more action, or a slightly better blade finish, or even a slightly lower price, it would probably be over the line. But mostly, I like it. I think it's really good that Wee is kind of keeping to push the lower-cost pieces and pushing the higher-end steels and the lower-cost pieces and pushing those values, and I'm really thrilled that they're making designs that are a little bit more, mainstream is the way to put it. I mean, a knife like this is certainly a Wee knife, but it's not going to appeal to a lot of people, whereas I think this is going to be a much more universally appealing knife, not just to knife collectors and not just to people who love Wee specifically, but to just your random jackass on the street who needs something to cut with. So anyways, there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you, that you found this review practically to answer all your questions, to practically answer all your questions. That's how that should have been phrased. And that you have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Practic makes perfect. If I film this again, no, I'm not filming it again. Bye now.